to do.
Dear green friends, after these motivating presentations and also after the presentations from Pia Olsen and Mirella Holly, I think it would be wrong if I would now try to hold a programmatic speech. What I would rather do is share a few thoughts about our motto, be the change. I think the most important question that we are being asked today by citizens that have invested their trust into us in the past, or by citizens that are considering whether they should do that in the future, is whether they can trust that we will be the change that suits them. And they will not ask whether we're good in negotiating resolutions about describing change, and they will not ask whether we are good at analyzing the conditions for making change possible. They may not even be interested in the political discussions or the policy discussions that we invest so much into, because this is our way of acting and our way of life. Many average citizens still have a very keen understanding of where they can put their trust, even though they will not necessarily share our very differentiated. Whether we can be the force of change in Europe is an open question. Of course, we believe that we should be it, we can be it, but the European elections in May did not give a conclusive answer in that regard. There were other advocates of change going in different directions that fared better than us, unfortunately. So we have to be credible as an agent of change, but also differentiate ourselves from others as regards the direction. But the one thing that I believe will reverberate with everybody is whether they see the ambition, the engagement, and the power to affect change. I don't think that a lot of people put their trust into politicians or leaders from whatever background if they think they just talk change, or they talk interestingly, or they have nice ideas. It will be about the power to make a real difference on the ground where it counts. Whether we have that potential or not decides everything. And we have a lot of priorities. Usually, we Greens have too many priorities. Again here, when we started out discussing in the committee, we started with 3 priorities. I'm not sure, I lost count, but I think we're now at 7 or 8. But there's one thing that I believe will be essential for our credibility and we will be measured by whether we can affect change there, whether we can show the power to make change come true, and that will be the climate issue. I strongly believe that this is for our generation the core issue. We will be judged in the future by whether we were successful or whether we failed on that, because this is not only an environmental issue. This is an issue that has great implications for the social cohesion of our society. It has fundamental implications for our way of producing and consuming, for our economies. It has great implications for the international relationships, for North-South relationships, for international peace. All the different struggles that we have led in the past, in a way, come together and are bound together when we try to tackle climate change. Of course, if we sell that in a narrow-minded way, people will not be very interested in listening. If we don't tell them, as Max reminded us this morning, that this is also about social justice, that there cannot be social justice if we let climate change run away and destroy the very basis of social cohesion, then why should they be interested if they feel the pain every day? If we cannot tell them that this is what we have to pursue in order to rebuild and transform our economies and make them sustainable and make them competitive for the future, why should they be listening if they are in need of a job? And all the other elements can be argued similarly. Now, what we should do, however, be also very clear. If we go about this with a business as usual approach, we will have all kinds of events, all kinds of discussions, all kinds of resolutions, all kinds of interjections in Parliament, all kinds of criticisms that we put to others who don't work as they should, but we may fall short of being the change. In the workshop that we had yesterday on the climate change issue and the campaign that we're trying to run, someone said from the participants, well, if we ask member states and if we ask the international community to pledge goals of what they want to contribute to fighting climate change, why don't we pledge goals? Individual green parties, individual green politicians, individual party organizations, why don't we pledge goals? If we do that, I found that a very interesting proposal. If we do that, we will not be able to allow ourselves to ignore whether we fail or win. And this is the kind of seriousness that I think we need. Because if there's anything that I found lacking in our communication, it was not the smart ideas. We had plenty of them. It was not the good politicians. We have plenty of them. It was not the sharp criticisms, always abundant among Greens. But it was maybe a lack of conviction that we are burning that hot, that we will not stop working, and maybe a little bit too much of being part of business as usual. And if we continue on that way, we will fail, we will not deliver. And this is why I say, over the next year, this is very specific, this is very concrete. Can we make change? We've been fighting defensive battles on the climate issue for many years now, since Copenhagen at least. And we've seen the majorities changing not to our advantage, just the opposite, even in the European Parliament. Can we turn that around? Conventional wisdom says, very difficult, I agree. But if we don't approach it with the goal of doing that, we will fail. We will have to build all kinds of alliances. We have to open up our arms. We talked, I think in passing, about the Movimento 5 Stelle in the European Parliament. They sit with the ugly UKIP party on the right wing. But on climate change issues, on energy efficiency, they have good views. We are, and the Green Group is, looking into how we can cooperate with them specifically on that kind of stuff. There are businesses that make their profit by going green. We can make alliances with them. There are trade unions that want to go green because they know this is about securing and creating new jobs. We have to open up our arms. One of the major mistakes that we should not make would be just keeping among ourselves. We're a lovely family and everybody contributes, but let's invite more to join us and let's be serious and be the change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reinhard. I would now like to invite to the stage the co-president of the Green Group in the European Parliament. The Green Group has been re-elected. There's a new group full of new energy, and Rebecca is going to tell us, what are you going to do?
So good to see you again today in a good shape, and we will see, but I think on priorities I can't but agree with Reinhard. I try not to duplicate the speech, but so I can't also avoid to speak on climate and energy. But first of all, I have to excuse Philippe Lamberts, the new elected co-chair of the Green Group in the European Parliament, well known in the European Green Party because he has been our co-chair in the party. He is ill. He's suffering from a very, very bad back pain, and he could not make it to fly to Istanbul with this pain in his back. I think altogether, and I hope he's following, altogether we should wish him not only a good recovery, but also a fast recovery. I know that I need him, but I think also you know that I need him and we need him soon to be back in business. Greetings to Philippe. So we had a discussion yesterday, Philippe and me, on the phone because we thought we should also for the group comment a little bit on the evaluation of the campaign. I don't want to go too deep into it, but I think, as I heard also from the workshop on this issue today, it's very necessary to have a differentiated evaluation about what went wrong and what went in a wonderful way. Because we saw, after the campaign, we saw some miracles happening. For example, in Hungary, and this Hungarian miracle, believe it or not, as complicated as it is, with two different parties now present in our group, this Hungarian miracle, together with the very, very strong presence of new members from the east of Europe, gives another tremendous chance for the European Greens to make the change also in the east of Europe. And so besides this Hungarian miracle, I would like to underline that it's also good that we have a strengthened presence from the north of Europe, that we have a strengthened presence in our group from Sweden and from the UK. These are, together with Austria, the three other true success stories out of this campaign. But the other stories we have to think about are more about weak results, are more about also defeats and losses. And what made the differences in the campaign, we have really to carefully figure out, because we have to prepare ourselves better for the next campaign, and this must always be based on this. Philippe and me, we agree 100%. This must be based on a very, very honest analysis about what we used as instruments, what we put in the focus in the campaigns. And from my experience, and I'm now the third time in a situation after being a leading candidate in a German European campaign. So from my experience, maybe the most important thing to be changed in our parties, and also the parties need a certain change, I would say, when it comes to European issues. The most important change required in the parties is about coming out of this niche, which is in many of the national parties for the European politicians and the European issues. If we are not able to come out of this, meanwhile, well-organized niche, we will never, ever be able to really harvest the potential which is there for the European green issues and the European Green Programme. So having said that, let's come to Brussels. So we are in a situation, we have re-established the group, we have a new commission, we have a new president of the European Commission, Mr. Juncker. And what's going on? Mr. Juncker, only few days after starting in his new position, he is in a big shit. So it's funny, and I have to say it, even liking Mr. Juncker as a European personality, you know that I backed his candidacy a lot, but he is in a big shit. And I think it's very good that this happens. This special issue makes him a problem at the beginning of this new period. Because it's about this old nasty story of tax competition and legal tax avoidance. And the European Commission, in the hands of a Luxembourg Commission president, should now really try to change this awful part of European policies. They should come to an agreement that this dangerous and ugly tax competition in between the member states comes to an end. And so for the start of Juncker, I think he can now really show that he wants to make a difference after leaving his home country, Luxembourg. It must be clear among us that this issue of awful tax competition and tax havens is not only a problem of Luxembourg. There are other dirty players. There are other dirty players sitting with Mr. Juncker for a long time together in the European Council. When it comes to economic crisis, this is, I think, again, the main issue in the beginning of this new term in Europe. I found it very interesting what has been presented to me during my visit in Washington last week. I went to Washington because of Ukrainian issues, because of Syria, because of TTIP, and because of climate issues. And what has been presented to me in the meetings with the Global Resource Institute, the World Resource Institute, is this new report. Its title is Better Growth, Better Climate, the New Climate Economy Report. Talking about it's very important for us to check what is in this report and who has signed it. There are many former leaders of states. There are many former and also still being in the business. There are many leaders of national banks, of international banks. There are many, many scientists. There are people representing the economy, and they say, especially to the Europeans, if you want to come out of the economic crisis, do it via the climate economy. Meanwhile, Brussels, yeah, what's going on in Brussels? So I get this report in Washington. What's going on meanwhile in Brussels? In Brussels, the leaders of our member states decide not only against ambitious climate and energy and efficiency targets. They decided to completely dismantle the European climate legislation because they decided against all what has been binding so far in this climate and energy package which had been agreed years ago. So if there is truly something what the Greens have to pick up as their issue, then that is, as Reinhard said, this story, how to make something out of the climate challenge for also overcoming the economic crisis. And I think, and therefore also I showed this report and quoted the very, very simple title of this report. I'm convinced we should not make it too complicated. So we should be in favor of the growth of renewables. We should be in favor of the decrease of energy consumption. We should be in favor of harvesting all possible jobs around energy efficiency and energy savings strategy, and we should not make this too much a problem in our discussions on degrowth. So as Yannick yesterday, I think, rightly said, we are in a political environment where our messages must fit also to the demands of the citizens, and those who are worried about their jobs, about their perspectives, about economic development. So partly they will find their answers in reports like this, and they will find even better answers in our work, which has been done during the last legislation in the Green New Deal working group. So don't shy away from this. We have something where we make the difference and where we can really be the drivers of ecological and social change in Europe. So I don't want to leave this situation here in the opening on the Council without touching the issues we will discuss in detail this afternoon. So this afternoon we are going to talk about intensively on Ukraine, on the Eastern Partnership, the EU-Russia relation, and we are talk about Syria. We are going to talk about Syria, Kobane, hopefully also about Aleppo, ISIS, the Kurds. All the issues will be in our discussions. I would like to add something to especially the situation in Ukraine and this situation so in between Russia and the EU. I think for Ukraine, not for Ukraine, but maybe the other way around, it's better. For the EU, it's crucial for our future integrity that we are able to deliver on the right of self-determination in Ukraine. If we can't deliver on this, this will challenge really the whole European project and its integrity. And I see growing tensions already long, growing tensions in between the Eastern members of the European Union and the West on this. So the integrity of the EU very much depends on that we are able to define, to redefine our relations to Russia. And I'm not among those who want to worsen situations towards Russia. But what I'm convinced about, and especially if you look on the figures which have been produced in a report that Reinhard Bütikofer commissioned and that has been presented yesterday, I'm convinced about one thing. We have to come out of the growing dependency on Russian gas and Russian resources, because Russia is doing more and more politics based power politics based on these resources. And believe it or not, and in this Greens should be also very self-confident, in parts we have the answers already in our old ideas on energy transition and the Green New Deal. And a last remark concerns this region. Also, before we are going to discuss this afternoon on Middle East problems and the war or the two wars or several wars going on in the immediate neighborhood of Turkey, which makes the very, very difficult situation in Turkey, the internal development in Turkey, even more a problem. So I'm convinced that it is right to stop ISIS with also military means and to help the Kurds. But after all my meetings last week in Washington and after a lot of meetings here in Istanbul, I'm also convinced that peace will not be achieved in this region in short military interventions right now or with weapons supply for certain forces. I'm convinced that if we forget about the war in Syria, I'm convinced that if we forget about the ongoing war also in Iraq, we will not make it. How to come back to a peace process will be very, very difficult because too many players behind the scenes have their stakes in this conflict. It's very demanding, and again, one power is very important in this situation, and this is again Russia. And how to make it, how to come to an international solution is very difficult, and the Europeans, and this is really what concerns me in the European Parliament mostly in this situation, the Europeans cannot wait until they have solved their internal problems before they really contribute on this level on which they are playing globally, so as a true economic and world power. Thank you for your attention, and I'm waiting for really exciting discussions this afternoon.